Do you ever look at your favorite photographer's work and just think, man, I wish I could take a photo like that. I wish I could just capture light like this person. I wish I could pose my subjects like this. How do they know how to click that shutter at the perfect moment? We're in the middle of one of our projects, taking a picture, editing a video, editing a stupid YouTube video, and think about the people we look up to and think, why do I even bother? That imposter syndrome bubbles up to the surface, but it's a trap. The trap we always fall for, comparing our lowest moments when we're feeling our worst with our hero's best. We are not comparing apples to apples. And I found a little bit of an antidote. This isn't about being critical. It's about seeing our heroes as humans and using that to inspire us as photographers to keep pushing. Our brains love to fill in the gaps and completely fictionalize the story of immaculate conception, a holy orchestration of mastery. And in my opinion, a lot of people won't admit one thing. A lot of great artists will completely and freely admit it. We're just a bunch of bumbling idiots trying to make stuff the best we can with what we've got. We're a bunch of bumbling idiots at different levels of idiocy, but this insecurity about our work is pretty universal. I think a lot of people wait for this insecurity to somehow leave, that they can get the right gear or they can study their heroes enough to figure out a trick to bypass this insecurity. But the good news is, or the bad news, depending on your perspective, is that this insecurity, this imposter syndrome we feel as creatives, is simply our bodies reacting to the tension that is the nucleus of any good creative work. We should stop resenting it. And I'm talking about the resistance that even I felt in my body to even make this video. We gotta learn how to get over it. I'm gonna use some examples from photography in particular. My favorite books are the ones that give you a glimpse into the process of your favorite artists. I got this book on Eve Arnold at a used bookstore a few years ago, and she is a legend. A pioneering female photographer in a very dude-heavy craft at a very dude-heavy time. When I think about Eve Arnold, I literally think about the shot of Marilyn Monroe. Dorothy Lang is another incredible photographer from that same period. And when I think about her, all I can see in my head is her migrant mother image. I know it's my problem, but my brain acts as if her whole life is really just in service of this one image for my brain to hold. Or that Eve Arnold only took this one shot of Marilyn Monroe and then called it a career. Or that Elliot Erwitt noticed a cute moment and just clicked the shutter. I think it's human nature to think like this, but it's also wrong. Knowing my own photography so well, but then comparing it only to these cherry-picked, spectacular examples of the best photographers' work is crazy. It canonizes them as if they approached the subject with perfect poise, knowing exactly what they wanted to capture, as if they never had to struggle to find the image. A lot of photographers and other artists are totally fine to project this mastery of their art. It's good for PR, feeds their egos. They'll start to believe it themselves. But it's bullshit. It's called the artist's mystique, which is great for people who are using it to their benefit. But for us regular folk, it's the perfect, moist, loamy conditions for the seeds of imposter syndrome to grow. Why would I even think of picking up a camera when Todd Hido exists? Why would I even bother? Well, I do bother because I can't help it, and I want to take pictures. I want to take good pictures. So when I'm spiraling, when I'm feeling down on myself, I think back to these books or physically open them and take a look at some of my favorite photographers' contact prints. After a film photographer would come back from a shoot, they would have undeveloped film negatives. They would get those negatives developed as quickly as possible. Think of a journalist, how fast they would need their film developed. So I brought some here. They've already been trimmed, but these are negatives in here. I was born in the 80s, and when I was a kid getting my pictures back, I would just get prints. I thought prints were the product you were after. The negatives, I always wondered why they were included. As I learned in my teenage years, when I started shooting black and white photography and developing it myself in my basement, the negative is the king. The negative is your data, it's your source, but it's a negative. Your brain can't process it. Film is light sensitive. So when something bright, like the bright sky, hits the negative, it makes it darker. It burns the image in darker. What should be light is dark, and what should be dark is light. It makes a negative image. Today, and if you've seen some of my older videos, I digitize my negatives with my camera, and I can very easily get a positive to view on my computer. But pre-digital, making a good print, it's labor intensive. You would take the negative and project it down onto light sensitive paper and you can get a print. Here's a joke glamour shot I took of myself. Actually, my sister took this of me. I developed it in my basement when I was a teenager. But that takes time. You're working with one negative at a time. So back in the day when people wanted to make quick choices and they wanted to decide quickly what is a good shot and what is a bad shot, they would do what's called a contact print or a contact sheet. You would slide your negatives into these slots. So you would fill out the contact sheet frame with your negatives, and you would lay this on a standard 8x10 print. You have to do this in a dark room, of course. And you lay it underneath, and then you project the light down on it, and it creates a contact print of your whole roll of film. From that goofy glamour shot that I showed you, look at this one. I put Vaseline on the actual lens of my enlarger to make it look extra glamour shotty. So you've essentially made a negative of a negative. You don't have to look at a negative anymore. You can see your roll of film as a positive. And then you take your loop, and you can actually inspect your frame. You can look through at your negatives and you can very quickly make a choice. You don't even need to. You can just see really nice and clearly what is a good shot and what is not a great shot. So that's called a contact print. So why am I talking about contact prints and why are they the cure for this spiraling pit of despair, this imposter syndrome? It's because they cut through the mythology that others and ourselves create around these great creative people. Contact sheets were the physical manifestation of the whole shoot, of the whole roll of film, roll by roll. They're artifacts of the photographer's choices, and they're like the original behind the scenes. You get to see step by step the choices that they made to get a shot. Inside the cover of this book is a contact sheet of Eve Arnold's shoot with Marilyn Monroe. She's on set, and you can see the choices that she's making. You can see what she's circling, what she's thinking about choosing, and what she is Xing out. Contact prints are an incredible cheat sheet. Those people we look up to who post on Instagram, these like epic bangers, we don't get to see the hundreds of in-between shots that they took to get there. We don't see the struggle. They don't share the struggle. We don't know if that one banger was a singular moment of creative genius or one totally lucky shot out of 1,000. Plus, with how many people shoot burst mode these days when they don't need to, I got enough digital files to look through. I don't want to look through other people's digital files. I made my photo zine over the holidays. Quick plug, it's for sale on my website. The link is below. But it's like 21 pages. I don't know how many images are in it off the top of my head. And those images were culled from a really big pool. And at the end of the day, in my zine, of the photos that I'm actually proud of, there's only a couple that I think are just great shots. You know, it's like watching footage of a hole-in-one. You see someone hit a ball and it goes in the hole, and they're a good golfer and all of that. But you don't see the other 9,999 attempts. You don't see the training and the work and the sweat and the tears that they go through to make that happen. And sure, there is luck. I think if we were forced to watch someone try to get a hole-in-one, it would be exciting. But at a certain point, even with the best golfer in the world, we're kind of waiting around a little bit. Like, hurry up and get it in the hole. We realize that golfer, even if he doesn't get one in, we realize that he's an exceptional golfer. But we see how much work it is for someone at the top of their game to get even remotely close. So why don't we cut ourselves the same slack? Looking through Eve Arnold's contact sheets in this book, it feels like cheating. Being able to see the images on either side of the one that we have culturally seared in our head, it humanizes our heroes a little bit. In Eve's case, you can see her really searching on the way to the image that just finally clicked. Looking at Dorothy Lang's Migrant Mother, we tell ourselves she's a master, she's legendary, and we are not incorrect. But look at the contact sheet. This image was not one and done. This was a working session. Elliot Erwitt has a famous image of a woman's legs and a chihuahua or some kind of tiny dog, and it's a funny image. I love this image. But look at the contact print and you'll see that it wasn't a fleeting moment. This is a woman and a dog that he obviously stopped and spent a lot of time with. And even beyond the frame he picked, he did some very massive cropping on the final image. I've even had some snarky comments on how much I crop my images. I've trained myself as a photographer, especially working with talent and clients and portraits and that sort of thing, to at a certain point exclaim, "We got it," to exude that confidence, even though about 50% of the time, I'm not sure that I've got it. I've done enough work. I'm far enough in my career that I know I'll have something that works. I'm maybe making this up a little bit, but looking at Elliot Erwitt's contact print, I have a feeling he didn't find the shot until he was looking at the contact print. And there was possibly anxiety and self-doubt, maybe not, but he found it and he made it work. I'll remind you one more time, we only see their hits. We're not seeing their mountains of rejected frames. I don't know Dorothy Lang's story too well, but reading about this shot, she knew there was a frame she needed to get. It took work. I outlined this video on a train on the way home from a corporate photo shoot. And although corporate headshots are not nearly as cool as having Marilyn Monroe as a creative collaborator, every photo I took that day, even though the lighting is fairly prescribed, every human face that I photographed needed a different approach. It took work, and it was a lot of fun. Even in prescribed lighting, every new face was a new puzzle. If it was easy, or if I knew exactly how to pose them the second I saw them, it wouldn't be fun anymore. It would feel like I'm working on a production line. It takes work. And although I take fewer shots in every photo session than I used to, or a little bit closer to the bullseye, quicker on every shoot, I still have to work to get to that moment where I say, all right, we got it. We got something. And that work, that tension, that resistance is the creative process. To avoid it and want a shortcut is to completely miss the point of the creative act. It's why as our world becomes more and more saturated in AI images made by a human's brain that has a little bit of their blood, sweat, and tears squeezed into every frame. They're the ones that speak to us. They're human images. Whenever I spiral and I struggle and I start thinking down on myself, I remember a couple of things. And one is that everybody does terrible work. We just don't see it all. And the other thing I try to remind myself is that fear, that imposter syndrome, that anxiety, that friction that you feel. It's simply the friction of you starting something good, of you doing the thing. I think back to things that used to make me anxious. Working with a model or a celebrity, or just taking a portrait of a person who doesn't want to be photographed. I remember that made me really anxious. And now it's one of the most exciting things that I do. I look forward to taking portraits of people. And I still feel that resistance of no, but I can imagine the incredible shot on the other side of that resistance. And it pushes me to push through. Because again, if it was easy, everyone would be a great artist. If the masters are missing more shots than they're hitting, maybe their bad shots are way, way better than my best shot, but it at least brings me a little bit of comfort. We've just got to get comfortable missing. One of the most famous photography books is called The Decisive Moment by Henri Cartier-Bresson. I'm not French. Hopefully that pronunciation's fine. This book is called The Decisive Moment, and it's a title that quietly implies this masterful confluence of skills and instincts and talents and all of this stuff for one frame. And it's a terribly misleading title. And it wasn't until a long time after I was familiar with his work that I learned he didn't pick this title. It was a title chosen for the English edition of his photo book. So as a counterbalance to the idea of the decisive moment and how it's bullshit, I'm going to share another Bresson quote that's a little more realistic. This is him talking about finding a shot and making it work. And these are his words. He says, "You have to milk the cow quite a lot and get plenty of milk. to make a little cheese. Thank you for watching. I apologize I haven't made a video in a long time. You know, I was busy making my zine. My last video was about the release of my zine. It was super great. I sold out in 36 hours, which is hilarious. It is in stock again on my website. If you are interested, pick it up. If not, that's great. Sign up for my newsletter. All the links are in the description. Thank you for being on the receiving end of my self-directed therapy sessions where I talk to a camera in my cabin.